And I think some of the deeper work of like, hey, I deserve to feed myself and be fed, and I don't have to punish myself or sacrifice myself for getting the task done. Like I'm doing some big rewiring.
Hey there, ADHD reWired listeners. Today is a big milestone for us. Today is technically episode 500, and we've been working on a special episode to mark this milestone. But since it's a Q&A day, that special episode is going to be released next week. Also, if you've been thinking about joining our coaching and accountability groups, we have a huge announcement that's going to make joining us this fall way more affordable. Okay, are you sitting down? Yeah, I didn't think so. So we're rolling back to pre-pandemic prices, which means you can join us in one of our coaching groups for as little as $1,650. We'll have more information at the break, or you can get more information now at coachingrewired.com.
It was one of the best decisions I've ever made to take this course. I've always thought of lists and calendar planning as really just mapping out other people's urgencies, and therefore it's just so hard to do. The big flip for me was when I realized that those things are about me building a great life for myself to ensure that I maintain the pillars that support my nervous system, and also as a way to see in that planning that I'm building in time for the things that really matter to me that help me stay grounded.
I learned a lot of the things I do in my life are coping mechanisms, and there are better ways to get around it. With medication was super helpful, but just being able to talk to my peers and find out like, oh, these are also problems that other people have, and it's not just me being lazy or unmotivated, has been incredibly helpful to the point where my A team we've already got plans for meeting regularly well into the future.
And seriously, thank you for being with us for these last 500 episodes. You won't want to miss next week's special episode. All right, let's get on with the show. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD reWired. We have our panel of panelists today. So we have a special guest panelist today. We have Trina Haynes from My Lady ADHD. Hello, Trina.
Hello, team.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. And we have Laura. How you doing, Laura?
Doing good. A little tired, but excited.
Awesome. Glad you are here. And we have Lisa Ciesla, my assistant and community manager. How you doing, Lisa?
Good. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. And Coach Kristen Martz. How you doing?
I'm here.
You're here and you got your mic connected.
I'm trying to move offices and it's like everything wants to fall apart right now.
That's the way you roll sometimes.
Yep.
And we got Coach Brian Entler. How you doing, Brian?
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, everybody. I'm doing really well. I had a great weekend. I went on a vacation. I went camping, and now I have a cold. So
no.
I'm powering through with my iced coffee, but I'm asking public requests for accountability if I forget to mute when I blow my nose. Asking for accountability.
Thanks for the advance warning on that. And I was curious because I saw your post on when you were leaving for your camping trip. Did you forget anything?
Oh, of course. I always forget something.
What was it that you forgot for this trip?
Oh, I think it was an extension cord, but I was able to borrow one.
Okay. Have you added?
And yes, it was on my packing list. But...
Oh, bummer. Okay. So I was going to say, did you add it retroactively so then you can use that list for the next time you go camping?
Oh, good one. Yeah. A recycle list. It's good.
I have a lot of different lists on my iPhone, a reminders app that's for specific types of trips, and it makes things much, much easier for packing.
Mm-hmm.
And we got Lily, who is a regular person who comes on and asks questions. So Lily's going to kick it off for us with a question. So Lily, now you can unmute yourself.
You've got me laughing. Thank you. I am wondering what issues you all face as our parents are aging, and of course we are too. And I know my parents are coming back to live in Minnesota, and I'm curious what the communication will be like now that we're no longer doing FaceTime, and my dad's very hard of hearing and has been adapting. So what do you face and how do you deal with it, or even your clients?
Okay. Who wants to jump in on this one?
Well, I have a few thoughts. This is actually an issue that comes up very regularly in our coaching and accountability groups with our coaching members is caring for aging parents, because that is a big responsibility, requires a lot of time and attention, is also an emotional minefield. Whereas it's sometimes comes down to prioritization. How do we want to immediately care for our parents because we have that deep emotional connection to them, but how do we balance that with also taking care of ourselves? And it can become a challenge, especially for anybody, but especially for ADHD people. I don't want to speak to your experience. I'm not sure your specific, you're they're just moving to you. But a lot of times we have a phrase in a saying in ADHD reWired, when the plane is going down, you put the mask on yourself first. And a lot of times we advise our clients to do that because we forget to take care of ourselves, because taking care of ourselves makes us better, capable of showing up for the people around us. So I'm just going to throw it out at the beginning before we get into specific ideas. Make sure that like self-care for yourself and prioritizing your own needs are in the mix when moving into a situation where you're going to be caring for aging parents.
That makes me think too, Brian, about like just discussions being explicit about boundaries and not just like having these assumptions. And then, because that's where, feuds happen, is that our boundaries get violated because they were never communicated. And then we feel a sense of resentment, right? And then we're fine with it until we're not. And then it can get pretty ugly. Who else has aging parents?
I just want to add to that is just asking for help when you need it. So I know that's really tough, but even if it's something small as like getting someone to help you clean your own house so that you can, help your parent, just really thinking about what you can do, who in your circle that can help you with just your own things so that you can step up if you need to.
That's great. Thanks, Trina. Laura?
I have a personal insight on this. My dad is 75 and he was just diagnosed with ADHD earlier this year. And it's been a really big adjustment for him to realize this, even though it's been there his whole life, which, looking back, we suddenly have this new lens. And for him, he actually was not very into accepting the label of ADHD. And I think that that's a big struggle for older, recently diagnosed people. Some people are delighted because this explains so many things in their life. And some people just don't even want to look at it. So just being aware that it can be hard to acknowledge, it can be hard to change behaviors. I've heard many times that people become more like themselves as they age. So if we look at it in those terms, the ADHD starts taking over even more. And I wanted to offer one resource. There's a fantastic new book that came out. It's called Still Distracted After All These Years, Help and Support for Older Adults with ADHD. It is by Kathleen G. Nadeau, and I've read some of it, and it's quite good. So.
Awesome. Brian?
I kind of want to rebound off of Laura's comment and with a clarifying question for Lily. Lily, your parents are obviously, like Laura mentioned, of an older generation. Are they aware of your ADHD and are they accepting of it? Have you ever discussed it with them?
Oh, yes. 99% of the family has ADHD except my mother. So yeah, I feel for you all. And although my dad was never diagnosed. Oh, well.
Well, that sounds really good. You'll be better able to set boundaries with them and expectations about your caregiving relationship if they're aware of that. So that's really good. Great.
Awesome. I think one of the things that I think could be potentially challenging with having ADHD and then caring for older parents is, what are they expecting of you? And is part of that expectation going to require a lot of last minute, like rearranging your schedule for stuff that they need? Like, I know for me, that would be really, really challenging. I think it's also something for us for someone of our age, to start thinking about things like long-term care insurance. I know it's not fun, but let me tell you, especially if we have kids, like we don't want to put this burden on our kids. Like if our kids want to help us in our old age, that's beautiful. But like I don't have any expectation of my son like having to take care of me when I'm, old and decrepit and senile. I'm hoping to get that old, but yeah. All right, let's go to another question. Thank you, Lily. I'm going to just read Tony's question. I don't know if it can go live or not, but Tony asked, does anyone have experience with or recommendations for answering the question regarding self-identified disability when applying for a job? I'm thinking, in my case, ADHD/neurodiversity. Yeah, and this comes up a lot, Tony. And generally speaking, we would say probably not the best of ideas to self-disclose on when you're applying for a job. I suppose it does depend on the type of job, but I think we're best off asking questions that we think can give us an understanding of what the expectations and the work environment might be like. So let's, Brian's got some ideas on this one.
I have a quick clarifying question. Tony, are we talking about the kind of fairly common, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses question? Or has they actually specifically asked you if you have a self-diagnosed disability? Because I don't think any HR person would ever say, what is your disability? If that is the culture at that company, I would take another look at that company. But I'm guessing, I think it's probably more like the self-identified strengths and weaknesses. Am I correct?
Let's wait a moment to see.
He's in chat.
Yeah,
okay.
There he goes. This is a question required by government for government contractors.
That's exactly where my answer was going. My daughter had applied online for like hotel cleaning, and they had it mentioned in there, the reason for that. And it was because they are required to hire a percentage due to these contracts, because it's like free money in a sense. It's government money that is offering that. So there are percentages. What I wasn't sure of was, does that include ADHD on their lists? So that could be a question you ask. What are the qualified list of disabilities that they are asking for? Because there's no need to disclose it unless it's helpful to both sides.
And Kristen, he says in the chat that ADHD is listed.
Then if you already have identified that that's not the culture, that could be to your benefit too. I would think he's asking how.
Yeah, here we go. Let's it'd be much easier to
I'll
pull
be
you
quiet
up.
and let him keep add to this, because that's what I'm not sure of.
There we go. Hey, Tony.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, your answers have been very helpful. And yeah, it was they say something about meeting some percentage of hiring people with disabilities, and I guess I've seen this sort of question before, but this time I was like, because it's a relatively new diagnosis for me. I'm older, and you were just talking about someone, maybe elderly parent who was diagnosed like at 75. I'm 56, and I knew I had something my whole life, and finally decided to try to figure it out. So I hadn't really dealt with this question before until like now, and I thought, maybe is it a detriment? Is it a benefit if they have these goals, and they say it's completely confidential, nobody's ever going to see it, but I don't know if I trust that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I would say it's important to also own this story as much as you can, really by saying like, this is how I work best, really trying to speak up about like what the assets are, like how does your ADHD help you in certain ways, and what kinds of supports have you found? I know you said you're new in the journey of this. Like for me, if I walked into a space that like I was expected to work in like a cubicle farm, like no way. Like I could not work in a cubicle farm. Like I would literally be hearing every single person's conversation and my brain would explode.
Yes, that's awful for me. I'm with you 100% there.
Kristen?
My thought around not trusting that, I'm thinking that like everywhere, your HR file is supposed to be confidential, because that's only for the HR person, and they have certain trainings and that sort of thing, qualifications, certificates, I forget exactly what. You aren't necessarily, just because you check that box, aren't saying, hey, I want these modifications. So I wouldn't like look at that and expect, oh, well, they're going to take care of that, because I imagine whoever's your supervisor has no idea who's who unless it's a visible diagnosis or unless they ask for assistance. So yeah, I mean, I just don't think that the only benefit is that it is helping them have their numbers, which, in the end could possibly protect you, but I don't even know if they would know, without you disclosing that. So I'm not real sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've said before too, on the show, on the Q&As, even just the idea of disclosing in the workplace, I think there is a change that has been evolving. I see more places, more people who are saying they have had positive experiences with self-disclosure. I think we're continuing to move in that direction, because I got to tell you, as an ADHDer who owns an ADHD-focused business, it's one of the best things being able to like just be fully out about my ADHD, because masking, it is a huge drain on our executive function. When we have to mask,
Yes.
everything's going to be harder. When we can truly say, yep, I can let my ADHD kind of hang out. It's not that I'm trying to let it hang out, but it can just, I'm showing up to the best version of I can any given day. And that's going to vary widely. Not having to stress about, what if someone realizes that I'm ADHD? That hasn't have to cross my brain like a decade. And I'm going to tell you, I kind of wish that for everyone, because it's lovely, because masking and masquerading sucks. Trina?
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Can I add to this?
Please.
I just want to share 2 resources for anyone who might be looking for a job. There are actually now job boards out there that specifically work with companies who are striving to be inclusive. So they are looking to hire ADHD candidates. So one of those resources is called Inclusively, and another one is called Metra, I think. It's METRA. And so they have job boards where they're specifically looking for ADHD candidates. So that's a really great resource out there. And then my personal feeling on this is that this is kind of a boundary that I've set for myself, is I don't actually really want to work somewhere where they don't accept me for who I am. So this is a personal boundary that I've put up, that I feel privileged to have that boundary, because I know that not everybody has that privilege. But I would much rather be open about my ADHD in the workplace than be masking the whole time, which doesn't work for me. So that's just something, you may get to that point where you put up that boundary where you don't want to work in that environment. But if you're not, privileged to do so, I would look at some of these companies that are specifically looking to hire ADHD candidates.
Awesome. And we got Aubrey, who's just joined us, and she actually can probably contribute to the answering of this question, since her background is also just HR stuff and coaching. So Aubrey, I'm curious if you have thoughts on this one.
I do have thoughts. Thanks for asking, Eric. Generally speaking, so I have seen this a lot too, where there's these kind of generic questions about disability, and they kind of fall in the same line of, you might see questions like, are you a veteran? So there's a similar line of questions, and kind of the reason why you'll see these questions is that some companies have to file an EEOC report every September, and it asks certain things, and how many people have a disability is one of those questions. And so they're gathering the data. Now, as an HR professional, I've never seen on the inside, I've never seen where that data is actually on your file. So if I go in to see your resume and look, I'll see all your resume and I'll see all your information, but I don't see how you answered those questions. So it should just go for the reporting purposes and not be quote unquote attached to you in the context of application process.
Thanks, Aubrey.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Tony, I hope that
Hopefully
was helpful
that
for you. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. All right, Aubrey, you have a question now.
I do. Okay, so this is one that I'm actively working on, and I'm hoping you all can help me find just even one little new thing to try. So instead of procrastinating, what tips or strategies do you all have for not relying on that big energy of, oh shit, I'm pressing up against the deadline to get you going? So I'm looking to reduce that procrastination time and more time in action.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah, Kristen, go for it.
Are you talking about a project or a one-off task?
Right now, I'm moving and I'm packing up my entire life and getting rid of most things and moving countries. And so it's a big thing. And so I noticed that in the morning, I have plenty of downtime, and it's okay, it's time to get going. And I might spend a whole nother hour gearing up to go. And over the course of a month, an hour a day is a significant amount of productivity that I could be utilizing. So it's kind of everything. It's kind of everything, Kristen.
So a couple of things I'm thinking about, particularly with that, is yes, you are, adding up a lot of hours. And is that time for your on-ramp, I like to call it, toward activation, is that useful to you? Have you tracked how much time you are spending on the work you are getting done to see, oh, wait, this is all right? I know as with our ADHD brain, sometimes we get in there and we go and go and go and don't stop, whereas other people might get started when they say they're starting and they take small breaks in between. Does that level out? And thinking about the why of the question for you in particular. What is it about this that is feeling like a barrier?
It's a good question. It's a good place for me to do some reflecting when I'm sitting in the I can't get up mode.
How do you use accountability when you're feeling stuck?
When I am excelling at using accountability, it might be sending a text message to somebody to say, hey, I need to be doing this thing and I'm not. However, I'm not really implementing that right now. I'm actually in the practice of allowing myself to take the time. And I feel like I've been doing that for a while now that I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can take a little less time. So I'm trying to find that sweet spot.
I think that's the place we're all trying to find too, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Laura?
So I've got a few thoughts on this one. First, I just wanted to follow up on what Kristen said about taking breaks. Yes. Your brain is getting tired, even if stuff that you're working on is going well. So really hone in on taking that time. And similarly, check in with your basic human needs when you're taking these breaks. Like, are you hungry? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Did you remember to take your medicine? Are you hydrated? All these sorts of things are going to help you keep up your energy. Anecdotally, I just moved cross country 3 years ago, and it was a lot. And I did manage to do that thing where I packed 1 or 2 boxes every day for a month and a half. And the big thing that helped me was tracking the project. Even if it's a small thing that you're trying to get done, track it. Genuinely. I ended up with a huge database in Notion where all of my boxes were numbered and there was a description on each one. And I felt so satisfied by the progress and the process of what I was doing that it continued the motivation that was just rolling along. So yeah, that really is my big secret, is thinking about satisfaction instead of motivation. How will I feel when this is done? And the mantra that I keep saying I want to get tattooed across my forehead, obviously I won't, but the only way to make something go away is to do it.
You mean burying your head in the sand isn't a viable option? Brian?
Hey, I really enjoy the phrasing of your question. Not relying on the big energy of, oh shit, now the pressure is on to get you going. That typically gets us over the hump to activation after we've been procrastinating. What if we could leverage that big energy proactively ahead of time to activate us ahead of time? We have a concept in our coaching and accountability groups called engineering urgency, where we can take some of that urgency and move it to where we need it to be. Suppose we had hypothetical task A that we know we've been procrastinating on and we need to have it done by Friday. But what if we scheduled a check-in meeting on Tuesday with the boss or whoever is holding you accountable for that? Say, hey, can we meet on Tuesday to talk about my project on Friday? They'll probably say yes. And that'll give you like, oh, crap, I've got to have an update on Tuesday. Otherwise, I'm going to have nothing to talk about in this meeting. I came up with that off the top of my head. I hope that understood, but like we can tap into that big energy and use it to our advantage, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That's a good reminder to not necessarily manufacture urgency, because I find that for me particularly, that doesn't necessarily work as well, but tap into like that big energy earlier is super helpful. And I really appreciated Laura's like thinking about it from satisfaction, because that removes pressure. And for me, when I feel pressure, like I'm less likely to do things. It drives me more into a paralysis state. And so those are some super helpful things. Satisfaction is a good one.
And can I follow up on Laura's comments about taking care of your physical needs and making sure you're not kind of burning yourself out? There's a great acronym, HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. If you realize you're experiencing any of those feelings, it probably means it's impairing your executive function in some way. So usually just elevate, if you realize you're any of those things, consider addressing that need before moving on with your tasks.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, that's super helpful. I've just been noticing that as I've been going. I'm like, oh, look, I'm hungry. And noticing how my go-to is to not feed myself, is to let myself be hungry. And I've had to like really do a lot of work around that of like, oh, I deserve to feed myself. And it's okay to take the break to feed myself right now. And it's amazing that I have to do that, but that's what I have to do.
So Aubrey, is there anything that you could think of that would make feeding yourself easier?
To make it easier. Well, the easier thing is like to have things ready to go, like pre-portioned and just like grab and go. That's the easier thing. And I think some of the deeper work of like, hey, I deserve to feed myself and be fed. And I don't have to punish myself or sacrifice myself for getting the task done. Like I'm doing some big rewiring. and some lineage healing, taking my mother and how she worked, and she's passed now, and trying to rework some of that in my own system.
I mean, the one thing that I would also just recommend from my own personal experience of moving, similar to Laura, creating that whole like inventory and labeling all the boxes. The thing I didn't do, which like in hindsight was kind of a forehead smacker, of I didn't cross the things off as I was unpacking. So like, which is the whole point of like making the list in the inventory. And it literally did not even occur to me until I was about halfway done with unpacking. And then I'm like, wait, did I unpack? I don't even know where anything is. So just from my own experience, don't forget that step.
Well, I didn't even get the step that I'm like, Laura, where were you like a month ago when I started? I didn't even think about keeping such a detailed inventory list. So can't even not do the thing you're talking about, Eric.
Kristen, and then we're going to take a quick break.
Yeah, one more thought to consider, because I don't know if you were aware at the beginning, I was like not in this space yet, because I am expanding my space at my private practice and moving my office in here. I was trying to use engineered urgency, and what I didn't account for was what comes up. A person came to put in new lights. I had a meeting I had forgotten about, and luckily my admin reminded me. So the engineered urgency turned into, oh man, why didn't I just do it last night before I left? Yeah, so thinking about those little buffer pieces maybe is something else for everyone to think about when they're planning out big projects.
Kristen, I have used engineered urgency around tech setup stuff many times and trying to do it right before I need to like be live on something. And let me tell you, the results were never good. Like, so when I'm trying to like set something up that I've been putting off doing, and I need to be online for something, I've finally learned, don't do it. Wait.
Account for more time. All I was trying to do was hook up this damn mic because the computer was off, and it became a 20-minute fiasco. So yeah.
Right. Because if we have that pressure, if we know that others are waiting, then it binds our brain and makes it really hard for us to do kind of simple things. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we have more questions for you. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our award-winning online coaching and accountability groups. Learn more at coachingrewired.com. All right, it's time for a special announcement you won't want to skip through. One of my goals here at ADHD Rewired is to make a big positive impact on the lives of adults with ADHD. But you know what? We can't do that if our coaching program has become out of reach for too many of you, right? So we are rolling back prices to pre-pandemic levels. That's right. So coaching with the amazing Kristen Martz and Brian Antler will now be just $16.50 instead of $24.99. And if you want to ride shotgun with me, it'll be $19.99, which is down from $29.97. That's $2.997, not $29. But wait, there's more. For the first time ever, we're throwing in 6 months of free membership in our alumni community. That's right, 6 months, $0 extra bucks. So what sparked this change? Well, you did. We've been listening to your feedback, and some of you have said, hey, these new prices have gotten kind of steep. And guess what? We heard you. If our mission is to change lives, then we need to make sure that as many people as possible can jump on board. So let me give you a quick background. I was in this business coaching program last year, and while I joined to focus on leadership, it turned out that it was more about growing revenue, and they told me, hey, you got to really increase your prices. So we did. But then something happened. As things started to open up again, we noticed it wasn't just us. The economy was impacting who could sign up. So the big lesson here, gut instincts matter. I was uneasy about the price hike from the get-go, and it turns out maybe I should have listened to that gut feeling. Plus, we know coaching and consulting are not the same thing. Here at ADHD Rewired, we're all about helping you make personalized improvements through coaching. Remember, change is the only constant, but one thing that won't change is our commitment to help you become more of who you are, more focused, less overwhelmed, and more authentically yourself. Ready to make a game-changing investment in your ADHD management? Our next registration event is Thursday, September 14th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Just head on over to the website, go to coachingrewired.com and add your name to that interest list so we can send you your pre-registration instructions. And truly, thank you to all of you who shared your thoughts. And a big shout out to my team for being 100% on board with this. We are stoked for this next chapter, and we can't wait to have you be a part of it. Go to coachingrewired.com to get started. And now, back to the show. And we're back. So, do we have somebody else who wants to go live? And then we can circle back. Has anybody read through?
So basically the question is just with emotional regulation in mind, how do I pick which 1 to 3 things, habit, trick, mindset, strategy to focus on? And when can I successfully implement more?
Okay. Made me think right away of that focusing question from the book, The One Thing, which asks, what's the one thing you can do? Such by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary. So if you have a list of things that you think would be helpful, try to see, is one activity something that could then sort of knock down a subsequent activity. Like for me, like exercise makes everything else easier. Also sleep makes everything else easier, right? Like, so if I had like to list 3 things I really wanted to focus on, let's say it was drinking enough water, exercise, and sleep. And I'm not going to put water at the front, right? Because that's not going to help my exercise or my sleep, right? But exercise will likely help my sleep. And both of those, when I'm sleeping and I'm exercising, makes it easier to do the other things like making sure I'm drinking enough water and eating healthy and stuff like that. So I hope that that's a helpful framework to think about. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. All right. Let's go to another question then.
So this is a follow-up from the previous question.
Okay.
Regarding parents with ADHD, and the book mentioned still distracted after all these years. My mom is 70 and has been resonating and learning a lot from my recent diagnosis, but I doubt she'll pursue a full diagnosis for herself. Would you recommend this book as a resource for her despite her not having a diagnosis?
I'll go ahead and jump in on that. Yeah, absolutely. As long as she is, in fact, comfortable with the ADHD label. If she's not really comfy being in that place yet emotionally, the book will probably sit unread or else exacerbate some negative feelings. But if she does feel like she's identifying with these symptoms and with this community, then by all means, yeah, give it a go.
I want to add to that too, that I could see the question coming up being, oh, I'm 70 years old. I've made it this far in life. What's the point? No matter what the age of diagnosis is, a diagnosis, it doesn't change the past, but it does change our understanding of the past. And when we can change our understanding of the past, especially when the past has been filled with lots of challenges because of undiagnosed ADHD, it could be really healing. Right? So understanding the past through a more accurate lens can be really, really helpful, even if there's not going to be any specific behavioral change that's desirable out of that. Let's go to another question.
I've got the summary on this one because I have some thoughts about it. It's
Okay.
Hilton's question.
All right.
And said they prefer to not go online. 50 years old, just diagnosed with ADHD after many times being misdiagnosed. And I will say I had not many times, but at least once told I wasn't, and they were wrong. So I feel you there. Their spouse has been dealing with all these ADHD behaviors and is very exhausted by it because the spouse is a very logic-based person, as is my husband. So it says my brain is not the same logic. It's like, how do you balance being empathetic to the spouse's feeling and not to beat yourself up for your mistakes and battle the frustration and defensiveness to protect themselves since she or he feels really fragile with the new reality, the new support behind it, and any thoughts might be helpful. first, of course, there's the boundaries issue. And there's the idea of we can't force someone else into directions of having, a growth mindset or making changes or things like that. I think my gut thought around this is address the things that are causing the conflict and how can you collaboratively solve the problem, and maybe some of the learning that comes behind it, instead of well, it's your fault, it's because of your ADHD. Don't let it be about the ADHD so much. Use the ADHD diagnosis as a guide for how can we get to a solution. That would be my first thing, because I think it just sort of happened organically with my husband and I, because he did kind of think in that direction. He was just like, okay, I'm not asking her to take out trash anymore. Yeah, I'll just do it. And that immediately alleviated, because I wasn't diagnosed yet and couldn't figure it out. So some of those things happen organically. I've been able to kind of look in hindsight and notice that it was that we kind of collaboratively solved the issue. And once that behavior was solved, it made things easier. And then when I got my diagnosis, he's a little more easy to talk to about it and share those things.
Cool. Laura?
So I am in a neurodiverse marriage, but regarding neurotypical and neurodiverse marriages, I really want to just offer resources, primarily Melissa Orlov, who wrote The ADHD Effect on Marriage. She has at least 5 books about ADHD and relationships. She's just amazing. She's also a phenomenal speaker. So if you go and look at her stuff online, her videos are fantastic. I also wanted to mention, even though it's not specifically for neurodiverse people, the Gottman Institute, all of their relationship stuff is phenomenal. It works great regardless of whether or not you're neurotypical or neurodiverse. I really cannot recommend it enough. There's a lot of Gottman-informed therapists out there also.
Yeah, it really is amazing how just the lack of psychoeducation about healthy relationships that most people have going into relationships. But it's not surprising if you look at the divorce rates. Relationships are hard when you don't know what the hell you're doing. When you understand what makes relationships work and what makes them, fall apart, a lot of this stuff is really predictable and preventable. And, speaking as someone who's divorced, right? It's if I would have known then what I know now, maybe things would have been different. Who knows? All right. Do we have more questions? All right, we got another, I think it's a follow-up from Mia. So do you have any tips for working through work burnout without the flexibility to be able to take a break away from it? I actually really like this question, because it's, burnout is something that I think all of us here, and just maybe for all the attendees, just raise your Zoom hand if you've experienced work burnout. And yeah, all of us here, myself included, and I have my own business and I love the work that I do here. Right. And I also have experienced work burnout. One of the things that I'm currently doing to manage some of my burnout is I'm typically not working Fridays right now. But the thing that some of the newer research around burnout that I think is really helpful to understand is that, we feel burnt out because of stressors in our life. But the solution is not necessarily addressing the source. The solution is addressing how we are physically feeling and what we are doing with that stress. There's a book called Burnout where they talk about the importance of completing that stress response as a way for dealing with burnout. It's basically all to do with physical stuff, physical exercise. It's connection. It's sex. It's those things that make us feel good and help us with the physical sort of hormones in our body. That's how we deal with burnout. So I'm trying to work a day less during the summer, but I'm not just sitting around twiddling my thumbs on my day off. I'm going and playing a couple hours of pickleball or doing something else physical, because for me, that's what helps me with my burnout. Kristen?
So I'm going to take this, not a different direction, but a different direction than what we think of, because you said I don't have the flexibility to take off of work. So let's not think about what can we take away. Think about what you could add. What is it you could add in your life to your work that's permissible, that works for you, that would create more dopamine hits, that would add more pleasure to the experience of being at work? I don't know what you do. The only thing I can offer is my own example. I worked in the schools. as a school-based therapist, and that is very, very tiring and tedious. So one of the things I would do is I would incorporate more music when I needed to, because I could plan groups. When we did summer programs, I would figure out what we need to work on and what's the fun activity that I might want to go do. Maybe I want to go roller skating and they would enjoy roller skating. So that's just a real short, brief idea around that. That was what I thought of, is I was like, that's how I addressed burnout back then, is I added things in that were fun for me that made it more desirable to go to the job. So I hope that helps.
Kind of makes me think too about the idea of like using the word burnout and what are the things that kind of light our fire, right? So if the flame's going out, how do we reignite? All right. Hope that one helps. We're going to take one more quick break because I know we're getting a little bit short on time, and we have another question here when we come back. So we will be right back. Hey there, ADHD Rewired listeners. We got something incredible for you today. It's not real, but here we go. You know those moments where you wish the world would just kind of pause so you can get stuff done? Or you're just craving a space where you can focus free from distractions? Well, let me introduce you to Pause Pod, the pop-up focus room. Imagine having a portable pop-up sanctuary where you can escape from the chaos and really zero in on what matters. Whether you're at home or at the office or even in your backyard, Pause Pod sets up in seconds and provides a soundproof haven tailor-made for our beautiful neurodivergent brains. And get this, Pause Pod isn't just a space. It's a complete focus experience. With its focus dashboard, you can customize your environment before stepping in. Need to tackle that long-delayed project? The smart lighting will shift to a cool blue to boost your productivity. But wait, there's more. Ever wish you could have a focus buddy to hold you accountable? With the optimal social accountability feature, Pause Pod notifies someone from your circle when you're going into focus mode. And if you try to escape early, it'll playfully snitch on you with a busted message. So if you're like me and you need a dedicated space to get into that focus zone, you've got to check out Pause Pod. It's the dream we didn't know we needed, but we absolutely do. Too bad though, it's just a dream. But you know it's not a dream? The support and the community that we have here at ADHD Rewired. Are you new to ADHD Rewired, or have you been listening for a while? Did you know that we have a secret Facebook community and it's free? To get in on all the conversations and interactions happening over there, go to ADHDrewired.com/community to apply. And if you are looking for weekly accountability and guided co-working sessions for things like cleaning, decluttering, writing, creative work, your most dreaded tasks, and more, check out our Adult Study Hall community at adultstudyhall.com. We've even got a monthly Pomodoro dance party that happens every fourth Friday of the month, and a 24/7 drop-in room for around-the-clock co-working. It's free to try for the first week and only $19.99 a month after that. And if you're looking for a taste of group coaching, then join us on Patreon at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon, where patrons at $25 a month can join me every fourth Tuesday of the month for our patron-only monthly coaching call. And if you love this show and want to support our work, you can join us for just $5 a month or more, and you can get uninterrupted episodes of this show, where we put all the ads and announcements at the very end. Finally, if you are listening to this episode early enough on the day it came out, you can join me and the rest of the ADHD Rewired team for our monthly live Q&A. We do this every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. The best way to join us live is on Zoom, so head on over to ADHDrewired.com and click on the Events tab to get registered. You can find it all, our coaching groups, Adult Study Hall community, our Facebook community, and more at ADHDrewired.com. That's ADHDrewired.com. Now, back to the show. And we're back. All right. Let's look at what is our next question from Carla. It's like a two-parter. And I don't know if Carla is able to go live. Do we not know? Okay. Have any of you read Carla's question? I can summarize. Brian?
Well, before I even summarize, I want to tell Carla how much I appreciate that you bottom lined your question without even being prompted. That's a skill that we teach in our ADHD accountability groups, is how to better organize our verbal or written expression to be more concise and not storytell. And you did it on your own. So you're already doing great. I just had to throw that out there as a win.
Awesome. Okay. But we still need a summary of the question, which is...
I'll just read this.
Yeah, the little bottom blurb, I think, is the shortest.
Well, she just wants help focusing. She's got all the stuff around it. The meds don't work
Did
for
you
her.
say she
That's not what's helping.
wants help focusing?
For the bottom line piece, that's why I use that.
I was just playing with that word "just" because it's
I know,
one of those
that's why I was
4-letter words.
Diving away from it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, how to focus? Medications doesn't seem to be working. My first question would be like, how much have you tried the medications, and how much have you tried different dosages, different medications? One of the things that I find is that people will try maybe a single medication on a single dose and say, no, that didn't work for me. And I think that meds don't work, or even 2 medications. I work with people who have tried more medications than you should ever have to try, but kept on it for almost 2 years until they found the right dose. And it was life-changing for them. Right? Like that is not a typical experience for it to take that long. But 2 to 3 different medications at different dose levels is pretty typical. And I think that a lot of doctors and psychiatry do a pretty lousy job of helping patients know what to expect through medication trials. And we talk about medication trials. That's what it is. It's trial. It's statistically powerful trial and error. I think people hear trial and error and they're like, "Is that the best you got?" But when you understand the statistical what's the word I'm trying to say? My brain just jumbled itself.
Evidence?
I don't know. The power
Significance?
of... Sure.
Can I say that because she can't go on live, she did say in that first question where she had more information, she said that probably because medications didn't work on her was why she wasn't being diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah, so that's what we call old school thinking. Because that is like I think the 80s, that was considered a pretty fair, like standard practice of, all right, let's see how you do on stimulant meds. And if you have a positive response to it, then that means you have ADHD. And it turns out most people actually tend to do a little bit better cognitively when they take stimulant medication. The difference is that people with ADHD like need it, and it typically does not speed you up when you have ADHD. Laura?
This one resonates with me because I didn't feel like I was properly medicated until I was 33. And I had been on a variety of psych meds for 13 years up until that point. And so something that I think a lot of people don't think about, they think, oh, this one pill is going to do it for me. And frequently what ends up happening is maybe it's 2 or maybe it's 5. Like there's no shame in figuring out what chemical combination is going to work for your brain. We obviously know that stimulants don't work for everybody. Some bipolar drugs have been shown to help with ADHD symptoms. Some antipsychotics have been shown to help work with ADHD symptoms. So finding a psychiatrist who's willing to prescribe off-label is like hitting the jackpot. And I would genuinely just look around, talk to a lot of people. Obviously, don't try and doctor shop for people who are willing to give you, the fancy meds. But see if you can find somebody who is willing to work with you.
And I think too, like the exercise, like intense cardio exercise is also a really important part of that. For me, like meds is the biggest piece of the pie for, how I treat my ADHD. But that's, I would say, less than 50% of like the efficacy of how I manage my ADHD is through meds, but it's still the biggest piece of the pie. So, but as we're exploring, not everyone can take the medication. So, the structure, the exercise, the sleep, that self-care, I've wondered like how much more diligent I might be around my self-care stuff if I couldn't get meds for some reason. Because we've all probably have experienced, especially in the last couple months, the med shortages. Like I've had to switch pharmacies. I've had some issues getting my meds. It's a pain in the ass because you need the meds in order to do the things that you need to do to get the meds. It's frustrating. Kristen?
Yeah, I was going to agree with that, but I also have a trick I've tried. I thought getting the meds, and I'm a therapist, I thought getting the meds was like going to be the magic pill. And I've learned a lot more since then about how adults present with ADHD. It's more like the crutch. You still got to do a lot of work on that crutch, on those crutches to get across the room. And I have that hyper, if you can't tell, because I'm answering every question today. Sorry. I tried to wait for more hands to go up, but they weren't going up. And one of the things that I have found that really works for me when I am really not getting that focus is I set my alarm every 15 minutes. I have a checklist for I've written out the time. I'm having to make a new one because mine got messed up, but it's a whiteboard. I'll post it on the fan page or the community page when I get it remade. And because my brain, when I'm typing and working on something, in about 15 minutes, it's going to go wander off anyway. It's okay for me to hear that alarm and go, ooh, check mark. I'm on task. I'm doing what I said I'd do. So I have that set. Now I'm going back to the work. I'm going to write my paragraph. And I go back to it and the alarm goes off and I go, oh, I'm on task. Yay. Now I'm going to take a break. If I took my break, but I started playing a game, I don't get that check mark. I might put a big red X for me, whatever's working for me that day. Because some people will say, yeah, that's so many transitions. My brain's going to do that anyway. It's about knowing who you are. If that kind of helps give you something to maybe modify for yourself to see if something like that could be helpful to you.
Awesome. All right. It looks like we have another question here for someone from Adam who is willing to go live. So let's bring up Adam. All right, Adam, you have a question. How you doing, Adam?
I do. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. It's been a long time, but I've been like in the corner, like listening to all the podcasts, but I think I was in session, 23, which seems so long ago now. But this is just like a question I throw out to everybody who's just, we're all in the same category, I think, where if we've done something awesome in the past, people kind of look at us and go like, hey, why can't you just do that again? And suddenly we feel that we're putting pressure on ourselves. And if we're married, sometimes and this is what I'm going through, my spouse is like, hey, what you've produced like multiple times before, like what's going on? And right now I just like, I guess what you were getting back to with the book Burnout, someone also brought up like the Gottman Institute, like understanding how relationships work and explaining what burnout is, but also because we are neurodiverse, our brains just work in different ways. So it's kind of challenging when you're trying to explain to someone like, look, I need X, Y, and Z to hopefully make that magic happen again. But if you've got kids, which I have 6 of, and life is happening, and don't worry, they're awesome. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm looking for not validation, but a little bit of perspective from those of you that have, you produced something successful. Eric, you started with this podcast and it's grown and exploded into a whole bunch of different things. And I know you've talked about it before, where you go through these burnout stages where you wake up in the morning and you're just exhausted. And like, I'll go to the gym to train and like, I'll get done with a set and I'll literally like go lie down on the turf. And I'm like, oh, I can just take a nap right now. And that's after like 300 milligrams of caffeine. Like my body's just done. So I'm just looking for help. Okay. I just need somebody else outside of my brain to like talk to me for a second.
I do want to kind of validate what you were saying, because I think that I know I definitely felt very viscerally when you were sort of describing when someone says, see, you did it. So like, why can't you do it again? When I used to do a lot of consulting with schools, one of the things I would tell teachers, I like to say, don't tell your ADHD kids, see, I knew you could do it. Like, it seems like that would make sense. And it seems like that would be a motivating, kind of verbal feedback. But here's the thing, when you have ADHD, we don't know if we could do it again, right? That's one of the frustrating things about ADHD. We are consistently inconsistent, right?
I guess that's what's terrifying is, down deep, like there's the little kid in me that's like, I don't even know how that happened. Like that exploded into something ultra successful and I did it again. But the second time I still was like, I don't know how that happened. And now I'm in this like next time and I'm like, how do I make this happen?
And, Adam, since I know that you're an alumni of our coaching groups, if you recall, when we did our weekly check-ins on your one thing for the week, if you say yes, we always ask you, like, what do you attribute to getting that done? Right. So when we have our successes, like the reason is we want to make sure we are identifying and highlighting and then trying to figure out, can we replicate the strategies we used for this success, for future successes? Because I think it's so easy we just move on to the next thing, and we're missing the opportunity for real learning and being able to apply that learning to future endeavors. Yeah, but that being able to do it again thing, that's a tricky one. Anyone have other thoughts on that? I think
everybody's like, huh.
I think we're all feeling it. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if that was helpful or not. I think my panel of panelists, I don't know. I think they just went somewhere. They're all on probably all watching like Trina's TikTok videos right now.
Well, I think everybody's kind of in that same boat where we've all gone, like you said, we all are in these types of groups because we experience certain things and emotions, and we don't want to say are unique to us, but we kind of seek out people that understand and go, they may not have an answer, but like I noticed everybody shaking their heads like, oh yeah, I feel you on that. And like you said, yeah, this forces me to go back to my notes, to go look through everything and go, okay, when I had those weekly wins, what was I doing? What was I looking at that was helping me at those times? So I appreciate that.
And, and a lot of this is that's an example of sort of the mental gymnastics that, if a certain line of thinking motivates you, use it. Right. And so it's about figuring out what moves you. So.
Oh, I wish someone would just give me the answers. If any of you could just
write
those down in order, that'd be great.
But do you really, like if someone just gave you the answers, would you even like follow them, or would you be like, no, I'm not doing it that way?
No, that's true. I would probably need to staple my hand to the page. So yeah.
Trina?
Yeah, I just wanted to validate what Adam was saying, because when he was saying it, we were all shaking our heads in agreement that we've all been there. And so I just wanted to like verbalize that it's very relatable. I think one thing for me is, usually when I've done it the first time, it was super exciting and I was very interested in it. And then when I go back around to do it the second time, I've already done it. It's not exciting anymore. And so it's like pulling teeth to try to do the thing. So just finding ways to make it more exciting and fun again, or tweaking it slightly to make it fun. That would be where I would start personally. But just to validate your experience, we feel you.
All right. Well, I think, we just had a final question come in. Here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to end this right now, but for patrons, we're going to include this last question. So I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, for being a part of this. And we do this every second Tuesday of the month. And I actually think, holy shit, I think that this is going to be right around episode 500 when this one comes out, which is super exciting. So thank you all. And if you want to hear this last question, which is about ADHD and anxiety, become a patron. We will include that for all of our patrons starting at $5 a month or more. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next time. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHD-rewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHD-rewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD-rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHD-rewired.com. If you're a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and the Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tibbers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.